Even if there were no Catholic schools, the church would still support these programs because it's empowering parents and it's placing an emphasis on the family and parents as the primary educators of their children.
It's time to go back to the classroom, a look ahead at the school year and the emerging importance of school choice.
I'm Alan Holden, and I'm inside this training center in Kansas that's teaching teachers to bring the faith to life for kids. That story ahead.
What's your favorite subject?
Sports.
Sports is your favorite subject? Very
Football,
good.
football, yeah.
Football, great.
Yes.
An experiment that's teaching the whole child. We take you inside a Catholic school in Austria where the students are living, learning, and thriving in their faith.
There are people who are giving everything to be the heart of the church and serve the people of God. That should be known.
Learning about nuns, the heart of the church. We talked to a Mother Superior about her new children's book and how she hopes to bring her message to classrooms around the country. A back-to-school edition of EWTN News In Depth starts now.
We hear sometimes that, private schools or non-public schools don't need public assistance. They don't need school choice because they have fundraisers. Well, we have fundraisers because we're helping children that can't afford to go there go to those schools.
School choice and finding the best education that fits your child. Welcome to this special back-to-school edition of EWTN News In Depth. As schools across the country welcome students back to in-person learning. With COVID restrictions lifted in almost all schools, it's back to the business of face-to-face interaction. The last few years helped parents rethink the classroom experience they want their children to have and to examine the many options available. We begin our education special with a look at what the phrase school choice really means. Here's reporter Mark Irons.
It's that time of year again, time to head back to school. But when it comes to finding the best education for students, one size doesn't fit all.
Not having that opportunity for a quality education, that's going to affect a person for the rest of their lives.
James Coltrera with the New York State Catholic Conference is joined by colleagues from state Catholic conferences around the country. In each of their home states, they all work on public policy issues of interest to Catholics, but they've packed into a classroom here at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. for a multi-day meeting focused on education, their own sort of back to school, focused on supporting students.
And they all have different needs, and so I think by empowering parents to be the decision maker.
Much of the discussion and presentations are centered on how to advance school choice. It's the idea that taxpayer dollars used for public education should be directed back toward parents, allowing them to use those funds and pay for the type of education or school that works best for their children, providing options beyond the assigned public school in their district.
And in Indiana, we're not saying that public schools are bad.
Angela Espada responds to a common criticism that school choice is anti-public school. Espada is the executive director of the Indiana Catholic Conference. She believes having educational options benefits families.
Recognize that not all children can thrive, in the prescribed environment. And so if the prescribed environment for your area is the public school, and that's not going to help your child, be enthusiastic about learning or thrive in the educational setting, you should be able to make a choice to find what's best for them.
It's about kids and families.
Sean Peterson, the president of Catholic Education Partners, leads this meeting at Catholic University. His organization has a great interest in school choice. Peterson says it can help families afford a Catholic education.
Wealthy people have always had school choice. They've always been able to pick the schools they want for their children. Middle class, not as much anymore because, schools have gotten more expensive. And obviously the poor among us don't have those kind of choices.
And whether or not they pick a Catholic school, Peterson says giving families educational choice by providing them with the needed financial resources is a very Catholic concept. In 1965, in his Declaration on Christian Education, Pope Paul VI said, "Parents who have the primary and inalienable right and duty to educate their children must enjoy true liberty in their choice of schools." He then called on government to aid parents in this by requesting, quote, that public subsidies are paid out in such a way that parents are truly free to choose according to their conscience the schools they want for their children.
And this idea that families should have the freedom to do whatever they want, right? How do you get educated? They can get educated in a public school, private school, charter school, online, at home, or in any other way.
Robert Enlow has been working to expand choice for nearly 30 years around the country. The president and CEO of EdChoice, what he has seen in the past decade is most encouraging.
I would argue that it's been trending since 2011.
Though school choice laws have not been passed in all states, there are a variety of school choice programs that aim to deliver education funds to families, including tax credit scholarships, vouchers, and education savings accounts. The type might look different depending on the state. In the U.S., school choice can mostly be found in the South and Midwest, but in total, 32 states across the country, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico have enacted school choice policies. And it continues to expand. In 2021 alone, 7 states enacted 7 new laws, and 15 states expanded 23 different laws.
So we passed legislation last year as our first school choice program ever.
That came in Kentucky, where Andrew Vandiver with the Catholic Conference of Kentucky has been advocating for school choice. A different story in Iowa. Sarah Adey with the Iowa Catholic Conference tells us it took some adjusting, but school choice was passed in 2006 with the intent to help low-income families pick their desired educational route.
I mean, it was a huge learning curve in the beginning when, this wasn't commonplace, and there weren't a lot of states that had these types of programs.
And some states still don't, including New York, where James Coltrera continues to fight. He says teachers' unions have been successful in preventing the passage of a law by convincing some lawmakers school choice will defund public schools.
Unfortunately, they believe that it's going to destroy public education.
Coltrera believes without school choice, families pay, including large families who want Catholic education for all their children but can't afford it and have to make a tough decision.
Families having only enough money for one of their multiple children to go to a Catholic school.
Politically speaking, the states that have school choice tend to lean more Republican, but leaders in the school choice movement say it's wrong to assume it's always a partisan issue.
There's this perception that all Republicans support choice and Democrats don't. That's not really true.
Sister Dale McDonald, the Vice President of Public Policy with the National Catholic Educational Association, hopes Congress will pass a federal school choice law. Up to this point, unattainable, no matter what party has been in power.
Our efforts are, it's not a political issue. It's a social justice issue, and it should not be, a partisan issue.
But Sister Dale is encouraged by some recent Supreme Court decisions which have assisted school choice, including the 2022 Carson versus Macon decision, which could allow even more parents to use public funds at religious schools if they choose. Outside of politics, one of the biggest obstacles to expanding school choice may just be awareness.
In Indiana, 80% of the families can get a voucher, but only 4% do.
Robert Enlow with EdChoice says when surveyed across the country, more than 75% of current school parents support school choice programs, but they may not be taking advantage of the actual resources available for their children. Only around 1% of students are using an educational choice program.
So there's a massive amount of growth here. There's a massive amount of opportunity. So we're not anywhere near done because we need to make sure parents know what their options are.
Mark Irons, EWTN News in Depth.
Mark joins us in studio to dive into the issue of school choice a little more. Mark, thank you so much for that robust and interesting discussion of school choice. Why don't more people know about school choice?
Well, that's a great question. And Robert Enlow with EdChoice there in the package said a lot of it has to do with messaging. When you think about it, for years, this has been about picking a school, a physical school building. But in recent years, what has changed is parents are coming around to the idea that they have the choice what's best for their child's education. That might not always be a physical school building. You think about homeschool, virtual learning, hybrid models, a lot of that stuff that also came out of COVID. And when parents see that school choice has to do with choosing education for their children in all the different forms, they get more behind the idea and are more likely to look into those programs that they have.
So you just mentioned kind of the elephant in the room, which is COVID. How has COVID really been the thing that was driving the visibility for school choice?
Right, absolutely. Well, remember, public schools shut down. Where did public school students go? A lot of them went to Catholic schools. Those doors remained open. And so what happened is that initial transfer of students, they found that they liked Catholic schools, and then they stayed into the next year, bringing more visibility to Catholic schools. But I spoke with Mary Pat Donahue. She's the head of the Education Department for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Listen to what she said.
Okay. We did have a terrible decline the first year of COVID, and then we saw something of a bounce back. So our enrollment actually increased 4% in the second COVID year. And we really think that that's attributable to the fact that the essence of Catholic education was made known to some people who otherwise wouldn't have looked at us. For example, we affirm that education is essential. Remember during COVID, everything was, is it essential or not? Absolutely, it's essential. Education is more than essential, right?
Absolutely. And you know, a lot of parents are starting to like this idea of education savings accounts. So if you want to talk about states and which ones to look for, we can get into that issue.
Absolutely.
In Arizona, right now, a law just passed this summer that is set to go in effect in September regarding education savings account. Very expansive package, but those opposed to this issue are trying to get enough signatures, around 120,000 signatures. If they can do that, the law will not go to effect. Instead, it will go on the ballot in 2024, and voters in Arizona will have to decide. So that's one place to pay attention.
And educational savings accounts, just for everyone who's watching, ESVs are money that follows the student. So it's a tax-free format that allows you to save money over time and that invested in your child's school of your choice.
It could be a number of different options for parents in terms of education. Another place to look at, West Virginia, they passed another education savings account package. It's now being challenged in court, could go to the state Supreme Court, so pay attention to West Virginia to see what happens there as well.
Making state Supreme Courts even more important. Thank you so much, Mark.
Absolutely.
For more on what school choice means for the future of Catholic schools, we're joined now by the president of the National Catholic Educational Association, Lincoln Snyder. Lincoln, is there a need for school choice because of identity and non-discrimination politics and curriculum issues?
I think in general, the church teaches that parents should be able to select an education for their child, and this has been very consistent teaching. And so, you know, beyond the politics of any one moment, the church has always recognized the role that parents should play in selecting the best school for their child.
We were just talking about an increase in enrollment because of COVID. With that increase that has been reported, are you seeing a difference in the makeup of the students that are coming to you, ethnicities, composition of their backgrounds that are applying to Catholic schools?
Absolutely. We attracted a high percentage of families that were not Catholic to our schools during the pandemic. And there's an opportunity in that for us. A lot of families came to us because we were open, but they stayed because they fell in love with the communities. And so for us as church, we have a tremendous opportunity to evangelize those families that could have gone back to a tuition-free public school and have continued to pay for tuition for their student in the Catholic environment. We have a real door wide open now to be in relationship with these families.
And that's it speaks to the universality of the church and also the goal to share the mission with everyone and serve everyone. But is there a difference then, this is a technicality, between diocesan and non-diocesan Catholic schools? And are you seeing an uptick in either?
Having worked with order schools and diocesan schools, I don't think that there's any one trend depending on the governance of the school itself. I will say we are concerned that in particular, many of our urban schools are under financial pressure. They have been for a long time and they continue to be. And we believe that choice programs, when properly applied, can be a very powerful tool for parents in those urban communities to make sure that we have a Catholic option available for those families.
Empowering those families so that they can do more for their education for their students. And how do Catholic teachers then fare in all of this? Are there efforts to recruit and retain them as those students come in and you have more and more demand?
Yes, we are working very hard to recruit the next generation of faith-filled teachers. I will tell you that the witness our teachers offered during the pandemic was truly Christian witness, bar none. They came to school because they knew it was the right thing for the kids. Our schools were the first open in almost every jurisdiction in a very predictable environment. And our teachers believed that it was best for the kids to be there in person in class, and they delivered in all humility and with great courage. And so we're very proud of our teachers. And as we talk to parents as to why they've chosen to stay in Catholic school communities, they see it in our staff. The number one reason to stay is because they were just so impressed by our Catholic teachers.
Well, we hope that we'll see a lot more. We were talking about West Virginia and Arizona earlier. Are there specific areas of the country, or are these nationwide trends where you're seeing this uptick in enrollment?
It really is a 50-state conversation and not just one national conversation about school choice. Yes, there is conversation around school choice at the federal level, but truly every diocese has to be mindful of the policies of its local state and needs to make sure that we keep pressure on those states to continue to broaden school choice efforts. It's not just any one plan. It's the hard work of all the people we just saw profiled from all 50 states to make sure that we are continuing to broaden school choice.
One last quick question. Sean Peterson with Catholic Education Partners mentioned that it was really important to do this kind of school choice advocacy because it helps the poor. What do you have to say about that?
We believe that programs like this really do make sure that every parent has access to the education they feel is appropriate for their child. Parents are the primary educators, they're not the sole educators. And for us as church, it really is our honor to partner with parents. The more tools that parents have at their disposal to make our schools affordable, we feel the better it is for our students.
Well, we look forward to having you back to talk about the students, the parents, and the teachers and how they do after the schools open up again. Thank you so much, Lincoln.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Our back to school conversation continues. We'll take a look at some unique programs stretching the boundaries of Catholic education and talk to a leader in the renewal and transformation of Catholic grade schools. Much more ahead in this special education edition of EWTN News In Depth.
The Kansas City area has seen a boom in Montessori schools, and now a method of teaching the faith called Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is taking off. That story next.
What did God, the Creator, intend with this? We are allowed to ask that question, and that broadens the perspective enormously.
A grand experiment in Austria at a school that's using classical Catholic liberal arts to teach students how to think.
Jesus is real, and he hears our prayers, and he loves us, and he wants to take care of us.
And the lessons of a new children's book. We go to a classroom in New York City to learn its message. EWTN News In Depth. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to EWTN News In Depth. We continue our special back-to-school program on education. So far, we've been focusing on students. Next, what about those who are teaching our children? You've heard of Montessori schools and their hands-on teaching methods. Reporter Alan Holdren tells us about the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, which provides rigorous religious formation for Catholic Montessori school teachers who then bring to the child what they learn into the classroom.
Today, Maria Montessori's self-directed, hands-on schooling method for children is well known across the world. But there's a more recent addition to this educational approach focused on learning the faith that isn't so well known. This center in Lenexa, Kansas is one of many places teaching children the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd.
Sounded like a strong wind. There's usually a presentation given, and the adult offers it, and then ideally, most of the time, the children are just at work using these hands-on materials that would help them to more deeply contemplate and meditate on the proclamations that they heard. Montessori believed that the hand was the organ of the mind, right? So children learn by using their hands, and so these materials that we have in the atrium are specifically designed to help the children focus more deeply on the Bible or the liturgy proclaimed that day in the session. I think a lot of times we think of children as empty vessels that we need to dump information into because we're the adults and we have that information. But Montessori said, no, it's very much a collaborative thing. That you help the child become who they need to be, and the child helps you to become a better human person.
Classes are divided into so-called atria, catering to 3 different age ranges: 3 to 6, 6 to 9, and 9 to 12. Diane Olson has trained more than 1,000 catechists of the Good Shepherd at this facility, supported by Lenexa's Holy Trinity Catholic Parish.
We very much transmit it to new catechists face-to-face. So it's, I think, maybe a little harder to access, but once you do, the network grows, and parents tell other parents, catechists tell other catechists, and once people see it, they seem to recognize its goodness, and then they start to spread the word to more and more people.
This is Mary's Catholic Montessori Training Center in Santa Maria Montessori School in Eudora, Kansas. They've been teaching kids the Catechesis of the Good Shepherd for the last 37 years, but it's only in the last year that they've started formal training for catechists of the Good Shepherd.
Probably the people who are going to set aside this chunk of their life to take the training are going to be people aspiring to be educators, but really it's a formation that I would wish for every soul. I think anybody who studies Montessori will find themselves changed. Similarly, like with catechesis of the Good Shepherd, I was blessed to receive catechesis formation first, which led me into Montessori, so I had that as a beautiful foundation. But the whole process of understanding the human being in a new and deeper way, the way God has created us to be, has been really healing for me.
To be a catechist takes 90 hours or 90 to 100 hours of training and formation yourself, because if you're not formed, there's no way you can form the children in the catechesis, the Good Shepherd. I'm also a formation leader in the catechesis, so people that come for level 1, for the youngest children, come back for 6 to 9 and 9 to 12, because they themselves are so deeply transformed by the method.
Holy Spirit's bringing up pieces of it all over the country, so hopefully we're just one piece in a big work that God's bringing about.
Archbishop Joseph Naumann oversees the Kansas City Archdiocese, where both Good Shepherd programs are, and where Montessori schools are booming. He's convinced that the Good Shepherd method is an effective way for kids not only to learn the faith, but to keep it for life.
I think it's an excellent method and an extraordinary way of teaching small children and even older children about the liturgy and about the truths of our faith. I think, first of all, with the adults that become the teachers, because they go through a very intensive formation themselves. And so I think you have a group of really well-formed, well-educated adult Catholics. And then for the children, I think it allows them to learn the faith in a way that's very engaging and very attractive. It allows them to come and use all of their senses really in terms of coming to know about the liturgy, particularly, and a love for the Eucharist. I think I see that in our young people that are exposed to this method.
Teachers are teaching teachers and are bringing this method to children all over. In the Kansas City area, Alan Holdren for EWTN News In Depth.
To continue the conversation on teacher formation, we turn to the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia in Nashville, Tennessee, otherwise known as the Nashville Dominicans, a religious congregation that's been dedicated to Catholic education for more than 160 years. A member of that congregation, Sister Mary Agnes Griffendorf, is director of the Institute for the Transformation of Catholic Education at the Catholic University of America, which promotes the renewal and transformation of Catholic grade schools. Sister, it's so great to have you with us. Let's start with your work for the Institute. How do you help teachers in Catholic schools, and what kind of resources do you provide for them?
Okay, so thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. This Institute for the Transformation of Catholic Education just started in October of 2021, so we're not a full year old. But our aim is to help promote the total renewal of Catholic education by specifically focusing on spiritual renewal, cultural renewal, intellectual renewal, and operational renewal. We do that through 4 ways of teacher formation, leader formation, program of accreditation for K-12 Catholic schools, and research. And so in the formation of teachers, we are working on program development for degree programs, for professional development programs, and we have on our website some resources that are for free professional development for Catholic school teachers.
That's fantastic. You say that you're not even a year old, but already you're doing so much. Are Catholic schools that far off the mark that they need this institute? How bad is it?
That's a great question. I think it's not so much a matter of how bad Catholic schools are, as it is about the response of Catholic education to the contemporary culture and to the needs of the present moment. So I think our Catholic education has been around since the very beginning. Jesus gave a mandate, go teach all nations. And so since then, it has inspired such a tremendous network of education throughout the world in the past 2,000 years. And each era faces its own challenges. And I think in our own time, in our own country, our Catholic schools need support to be able to help them really help their students to understand what it means to be human, what it means to be created in God's image and likeness, what it means to have inherent dignity and worth as a child of God, and not because of anything that they do or achieve. And so Catholic education is a truly human formation that really prepares students not only for life in this world, but in the next. And so this institute really aims at helping those Catholic schools, our K-12 system throughout the country, to be all that they can be in being able to provide the support and the education that really is needed for children today, that equips them for life in this world and ultimately in the next, and for a life of joy and eternal happiness with God in heaven.
That's right, because heaven is the goal. Sister Mary Griffendorf, you mentioned accreditation, and I know that that's an issue that responds to this cultural moment. Why accreditation? Why is that so important to address?
Absolutely. So what accreditation really does in a nutshell, it's an external review process. It's a quality assurance process that helps the school really align to its goals and to help to being excellent in every way. And so the challenge for the contemporary time is that most of our Catholic schools are accredited by secular agencies. And obviously that's a huge problem, because if you're aligning to a model of excellence that doesn't align to our vision of the human person, our vision of the fullness of what education can be, about the moral and spiritual formation of our children, then it's going to be an education that's going to be flawed. And so accreditation is a great opportunity. It is something the Catholic University used to do and has not done for the past 50 years. And so we are really taking up that great work of helping to provide a framework of excellence for Catholic schools, and then the supports and the resources to attain that distinctive excellence for Catholic education.
That's really important, to revive some of the things that the church used to do that they need to do again in this moment. Let's talk about your order. The Dominican order is dedicated to the apostolate of preaching and teaching. Why such an emphasis on education?
Okay, absolutely. So St. Dominic was a Spaniard. He founded the Order of Preachers over 800 years ago. And he founded it in response to witnessing the ravages of heresy. He went on an apostolic journey, and he saw a tremendous outbreak of the Albigensian heresy in southern France, which was a dualistic idea that the spiritual is good, matter's bad. And so a lot of people were leaving the church and had really lost sight of their ultimate worth and dignity and their humanity. And so St. Dominic wanted to found an order of preachers that would be specifically devoted to preaching and the salvation of souls. And he did something unique, though, in religious life, that he wanted study to be a constitutive element of that religious life, because he wanted preachers sent out who could speak to their contemporaries to help them understand the reconciliation of faith and reason, and to help them to know and come to know the fullness of the truth. And so that's why throughout the 800 years of history, study and education have been a huge part of the Dominican order, because that is what we were founded for, preaching and the salvation of souls, to help bring souls to know Jesus Christ, the way, the truth, and the life.
That's beautiful. There is a papal exhortation, Evangelii Nunciati, an exhortation to the faithful that translates into in proclaiming the gospel. Pope Paul VI wrote that the modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than to teachers. And if he does listen to teachers, it's because they are witnesses. How do we form teachers to be witnesses to their students? And does your order specifically do something special to bring the sisters and to teach you how to be witnesses rather than just teachers?
Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, as religious, the tremendous gift of being able to be a religious with the apostolate of Catholic education is that we live a life of intense personal discipleship and of close, intimate union with Christ. And that, the beauty of that intimacy with Christ is something then that spills over into our classroom. It spills over into our interaction with our students. It spills over into the way that we can introduce students, not to a subject, but to a person, to Jesus Christ. And so the challenge that our church faces is the formation of teachers who are indeed able to be those witnesses of the gospel, that can introduce Jesus to their students because they themselves know him. And so the church documents often speak of the importance, and they say that Actually, the nobility of the teaching vocation is extraordinary because the schools cannot reach their goals apart from the teachers. The integration of faith and knowledge and faith and life happens in the person of the teacher witness to the students. And so part of what we do through our programs at ITCE, part of what my own Dominican congregation does and all of the schools where we serve, is we really want to be first and foremost witnesses of the love of Jesus Christ, that we want to bring to everyone we encounter the love that we have first received from God and to share that with them. And so that is certainly something that as we build out the programs at ITCE at the Catholic University, really working to find ways that we can form committed apostolic disciples who can be in our classrooms and can really help set hearts on fire with the love of the gospel.
That's beautiful, and it's going to change education. Thank you so much, sister.
Thank you.
More about teachers, the material they teach, and great ways to motivate students when we return.
When they come to the school, you can really observe how they flourish. And this again is very fulfilling as a teacher.
A Catholic curriculum that inspires the heart, mind, and soul. We'll visit a new school that reaches back in time to the classics when EWTN News In Depth returns. We continue our special report on schools with a look inside a unique educational experiment in Austria. It's back to the classical Catholic liberal arts at a school founded just 9 years ago. Colin Flynn reports.
Here at St. Thomas More School in Austria, students and teachers are beginning the school day a little differently to most other schools in the country. Every Wednesday morning, the school gathers at 8:30 a.m. to celebrate Mass together. And after the tranquility of Mass, school kids will be school kids. Walking the corridors, you can't help but notice the joy in the students.
I think this school is very, very good because the teachers are very good to the kids.
It is really good because everyone helps each other. Many friends here, I like the kids here.
The bonding between the kids in the classes is really nice.
What's your favourite subject?
Sports.
Sports is your favourite subject? Very
football,
good.
Football, yeah.
Football, great. But what's special about this school is that it prides itself in being Catholic. If you met someone who had never been to the school or heard of the school, how would you describe it?
Well, it's Catholic oriented and you get a good perspective here.
I saw the great relationship between teachers and students, and I really like the community. I'm proud to be here.
You don't normally hear students say about their school, I'm really proud to be here in this school. You really feel proud to be part of the school?
Yes.
What also makes this school unique is that it was founded by parents who wanted to give their children a real Catholic education. Dr. Christian Alten von Geusel was one of the parents who started the school with his wife 9 years ago.
Well, I think the first thing that has to be said is Austria certainly has a very high level of school education, academically speaking, but that was not the only thing we were looking for. We were looking for two other things. We were looking for a profoundly Catholic environment where our children could really grow day and day in the faith. And second, a school that goes back to the classical Catholic liberal arts. What the classical liberal education tries to do is it tries to teach young people how to think. That's really where it all boils down to. That's why, for example, rhetoric, grammar, and logic are the first 3 steps.
That is the basis for a court case, and we are going to also have here a court case.
These senior students have split into groups representing the various roles of a real-life courtroom and are preparing to debate the complex topic of save your siblings, a phenomenon of bioethics.
It can happen that the parents only begin to look at the life of the sibling and not...
And like in any real courtroom, the debate can get a little heated.
The girl in the movie, she is the person.
I'm sorry, we can't pass a judgment.
It's a private, fee-paying school, with the fee for each child being around $4,500 per year. 60% of the school's annual budget is then fundraised. It is completely independent of state funding.
2 years ago!
The first year there were 12 teachers, more than the amount of students. Annie Sellner and Alexandra Teufel are two of the teachers.
I've started when the school started, actually. It was really an adventure for me, and I was able to grow also with the school.
As a Catholic, you can express and focus on Catholic teachings without restrictions.
Today, there are 65 students enrolled, and it is growing year by year.
Beauty is an avenue to truth.
And the principal Christian says that an important part of the school is also making sure it is beautiful, inside and out.
Every window the students look from, they have a beautiful view on another beautiful building or on nature. If we create beauty around us, it puts our mind at rest.
Things that we learn here, we really learn for life.
Also, you can really reflect on the faith in the lesson. So this is, I think, definitely something that's not the same in other schools.
What we as Catholics can do is we can bring in a rich tradition, but above all, we can bring in the most important question. What did God, the Creator, intend with this? We are allowed to ask that question, and that broadens the perspective enormously.
In Trumau, Austria, Colm Flynn, EWTN News in Depth.
Next, religious liberty and religious expression in our schools. We talk to an attorney leading the way when we come back. We're following a growing trend in states across the U.S., new laws protecting religious freedom in school sports. This year, the state of Ohio passed a bill allowing students to compete in what is called religious garb, which includes hijabs and other religious apparel. The law was sparked by the disqualification of Noor Abu Karam, seen here, from a 5K race in high school. She now runs for Ohio State University. Wearing clothing that has religious significance is being protected in sports arenas in the state of Maryland as well. The Inclusive Athletic Attire Act, which took effect this summer, allows high school, college, and university student athletes to wear articles of clothing with religious significance while playing. They can also make alterations to their uniforms to be in line with their religious ideals, including preferences for more modest clothing. Religious liberty attorney Asma Uddin has been a leader in fighting for the protection of religious expression for all religions in the United States. She's worked on a wide variety of religious liberty cases. She's also the author of The Politics of Vulnerability: How to Heal Muslim-Christian Relations in a Post-Christian America, a book where she describes her involvement on the team that helped win the Hobby Lobby case at the Supreme Court, among others. Asma, it's great to have you here with us. Religious garb rules are nothing new. You've seen this in the international space. Can you tell us where they come from?
Well, I mean, I think in the United States, you can trace their origins to the sort of virulent anti-Catholic animus of the 19th century, where religious garb was targeted specifically in the public school context because they wanted to, the opponents here wanted to keep nuns out of public schools, the fear being the influence on impressionable young minds and the idea that somehow if teachers were wearing religious garb, that it would be a form of proselytizing. And so we had anti-religious garb statutes across the United States for a while. All of them except one have been repealed. Pennsylvania still has one on the books. And of course, today it's not nuns who are impacted, but people of other faiths, such as Sikh men who wear turbans and Muslim women who wear hijabs as public school teachers. Those are the ones who are impacted by these anti-religious garb statutes.
And these articles of faith that you're talking about, both the turban or the nun wearing her habit or the priest wearing his collar, this is something, like you said, that affects people of all faiths. Why is this so problematic in general from the perspective of our pluralistic American society?
Well, I mean, as you said, it affects just a wide variety of different religious believers. It comes in different forms, right? So we tend to often think in the public discourse that when we're talking about religious garb, we're talking about discrete minorities, such as, again, women in scarves or men in turbans. But in fact, almost all religions have some form of religious garb or religious symbolism that they wear as a sign of sort of like their expression of their faith or their expression of their devotion, in some cases an obligation in their faith. And so understanding sort of the wide impact here, the wide applicability is really key in understanding why bans on religious garb would be so problematic.
Let's talk about then the protections for religious clothing that are particularly important for students and teachers in the classroom. Why does that matter so much in the educational setting?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I mean, I think one is just an important issue society-wide and in public spaces, particularly where the government is in control. But when it comes to schools, I mean, unless you're being homeschooled or going to private school, I mean, you have to be in school. And so it's a space that you're required to be in by law, and to have to leave your religion outside of that space, a space where you spend most of your day, and then also a space where many young Americans are spending most of their time and also being shaped by what is happening in that space. And so for the religious believer, for one, it's like you can't really leave your religion or religious expression at home for most of the day and from a place that you're, again, required to be in. And for Americans of all faiths and none, it's a space where if the pluralism isn't reflected there, I mean, that's deeply problematic.
Absolutely. What about the trend internationally in in sports in general, and how that's bleeding into the discussion in school sports now? FIFA had a problem with young women who were wearing headscarves when they were playing. Is this also something that the U.S. is trying to buck or kind of guard against, a trend that could be coming into America?
Well, I mean, as your opening statement made clear, there are some really hopeful trends in terms of resisting the ban on religious garbs in sports, the fact that there is more attention being paid to the question of inclusion. And again, I mean, just like the public school setting, sports is also a space where many people want to engage in for many different reasons, and to have to bar people of religious faiths because of their garb raises serious questions. And I think it's also some of the rationales that are kind of put forth by those who ban these various religious symbols is that it poses some sort of safety concern, or something that might be problematic just in terms of like a physical effect in the context of the sport. And I think everyone should understand that while diversity is protected, I mean, these things can be protected with an eye toward doing it in a way that still ensures safety.
Asma, one last question for you. You're a mom too. Is the modesty issue associated with sports and religious wear in sports something that's attractive for you as well, knowing that you can put your child in a school sports situation that's not going to violate the way that you want them to view themselves in public?
Well, Montse, I mean, before I even talk about my kids, I can just think back to when I was in school and I was in my physical education classes and we had a required uniform that required us to wear shorts. And as a practicing American Muslim, I actually have to cover, essentially down to my ankles. And so that was something where I had to get an accommodation. And I think one of the points of the people who are kind of pushing for this sort of inclusion in sports is to say that why is it that we have to do this sort of piecemeal? Why can't it just be understood that this is an essential part of the way that people express and live out their religion? The modesty is going to be a part of it. And so it shouldn't really be a case-by-case scenario, but sort of a wide accommodation for people who are coming and have respect for modesty for a variety of reasons.
Absolutely. Protections that are proactive. Thank you so much, Asma.
Thank you.
I'm Marcel Regis here at Our Lady Queen of Angels Catholic School in New York City. Up next, we give you a preview of this children's book written by Mother Claire that introduces Catholic kids to religious life.
There's a new sister in town. Next, we go to an elementary school in New York to meet Sister Mary Andy. Stay right there.
Nancy Drew, Piggy Longstockings, Amelia Bedelia, Sister Mary Andy? Wait, what? Yes, it's true. Entering the genre of children's literature is a new heroine who just happens to be a nun. Reporter Roselle Regis takes us to a school in Harlem, New York, to talk to its author, the Mother Superior of the Franciscan Sisters of the Renewal. She wants her new kids' book series to teach children about the joys of religious life.
Sister Mary Andy let out a gasp and a thank you, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, with her eyes raised to heaven.
Meet Sister Mary Andy. She and her lovable convent of sisters are characters in the book series Little Convent in the Big City. Mother Claire Matias of the Franciscan Sisters of Renewal is the author. The first book, titled The Unsolvable Problem, is about nuns tasked with putting on a 4th of July picnic for the poor when they encounter a big dilemma.
Sister Mary Andy had a huge problem, an unsolvable problem. But in the end, what happened? Who solved the problem? God solved the problem. Well, you're right. You're right. There's no problem God can't solve. There's no problem God can't solve. With God, all things are possible.
This is the message she hopes to instill in children as she holds her very first book reading at Our Lady Queen of Angels Catholic School in New York City, next door to Mother's Franciscan Convent in Harlem. In the absence of an operating parish, the school relies on the partnership with the sisters to guide students in faith formation.
We're so blessed to be situated where we are, have this amazing school, and have the Sisters of Renewal right next door to us. The sisters support the school in so many different ways. They help prepare liturgies, they prepare beautiful music, adoration, they help us with different service events and projects, and I think above all, they're just so supportive of the students. The love for students.
Second grader Miley and Ileana say they enjoy the book because they can relate to Sister Mary Andy.
My favorite part is when she went to the altar, whenever she goes to the altar to pray for Jesus. I like how she's really passionate about herself and how she's always brave, and if something happens, she will always talk to God about it.
When I was little, I told my mom that when I grow up, I want to be somebody that helped the poor, but I didn't know that was a sister. I think that she was really nice and kind, and she always helped people, and she was good, like the author.
Serving as Superior General since 2018, Mother Claire felt a call within a call when she met a young woman named Kaylin.
She just really knew the Lord was calling her to something special and to really give her life to Him. But her response to that call was, God, how can you be calling me to something that doesn't exist anymore? When I heard that, I thought, this is a problem. This is a problem, that good Catholic girls are growing up thinking that religious life is of the past. It no longer happens.
Mother Claire knows it is nearly impossible to have a religious sister in every school, but
what if there was an adorable little character and wonderful little adventure stories that just happened to be revolving around a religious sister and her convent of nuns? And that's where the idea was born. Sister Mary Andy can be in every home that we can't be in every school that we can't be in, so that little girls can grow up knowing there's such a thing as religious life.
Mother Claire worked with her longtime friend and Catholic illustrator Michael Corsini to bring her writing to life.
Hello, I'm Michael Corsini. I'm a painter and an illustrator of 7 children's books.
Corsini says he poured his heart out on each page, adding more details wherever he could, to make his paintings look as authentic as possible. As a father of 5, he wanted to make each page colorful and playful so that the images captivate young readers. One of their main objectives is to project Sister Mary Andy as a warm, lovable character.
My favorites is the image of Sister Mary Andy in adoration. And the reason is because Mother Claire made it really clear from the beginning that the chapel is really the heart of the convent. There's a kind of tenderness in her eyes, I hope really comes through and kind of jumps off the page, that, this this sister is just in love.
Mother Claire hopes to get the book in the hands of every Catholic child. She says what other book includes both a kid-friendly explanation of the Eucharist and a recipe for root beer floats. She expects the next book in the series to be published next year.
I don't want to reveal too much because each new edition of Little Convent in the Big City will be a new adventure, and so I don't know. But we hope by next May will be the second in the series, so we can look forward to that.
Roselle Regis, EWTN News in Depth.
If you'd like to support Mother Claire's mission, learn how you can adopt a second grade class so the children in a Catholic school can receive copies of the Sister Mary Andy book series. Just go to littleconvent.com to find out more. And that's a wrap on this back-to-school edition of EWTN News in Depth. I'm Montse Alvarado. Please join us again same time next week when we share more news and reports important to your Catholic life. See you then.